We'll post this weekly challenge as well, and so there are pieces of this today that you may not be prepared to respond to, and that you'll have to wait for that rubric piece. But thinking about the key concepts for the role. So when you take that case study, or you take a new role this week that you've been working on throughout the weekly challenges, just really thinking about what questions would help you better understand or build confidence in the knowledge required to be successful. So this is where Tim and I, when we were doing this for our Upper Philadelphia search, we had about 75 questions. This is a brainstorm. Like, how can we look at the knowledge, skills, and abilities? How do we look at scenarios, all of these different pieces? What would it just like a complete laundry list look like of questions? And then it's that idea of how do you sort of pinpoint the most valuable ones? And we sort of say, an interview anywhere between kind of 5, 6, and sort of 8 questions is probably reasonable in an hour, saving 15, 20 minutes for candidate questions at the end. So if you take that, no matter how long that laundry list is, try to kind of winnow it down and say, if we're going to do 1 interview, 2 interviews, 3 interviews, how might we spread some of these questions out, and how might we kind of cluster them so that we can focus our energy and attention in that interview on common threads. And then that will help you build a rubric for that interview, and then it will help you know that you're going to learn something different in the next interviews. So we're going to ask you to generate that list of questions and scenarios to get at what you're trying to learn. How might you divide them up into 3 rounds? And then are there any of those extra resources that you might be able to use throughout the process to introduce in advance? And then maybe you draft a script. So maybe it's, imagine that you've got your hiring committee and you're going to assign questions and sort of figure out the weaving and the introduction and that closing piece, and just to see what that looks and feels like. And then finally, we'll be asking you also to kind of develop a little rubric for one of those interviews, just to get a little bit of a sense of playing with that, if that's not something that you're familiar with already.